homeopathic remedies that I recommend that you have on hand at all times, just in case. And what I do is I actually make these little cases. They're just essential oil cases, and they come with these little bottles and labels. So I make my own and carry these with me. If you do want a customized set of these, let me know, send me a message. But these are very simple to carry, very light. I can put these in our backpack when we're just running around town, when we're boating, when we're hiking, when we're skiing, when my kids go camping, when my son goes hunting. So I always recommend having homeopathy with you because you never know when you're going to need it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go over all of the remedies that I recommend. It was really hard to narrow it down to 10, but I did my best, and we're going to go through all of these. There are over 6,000 homeopathic remedies, so it was hard to narrow it down, and you may want to change this up depending on the needs of your family. Okay, thank you. So the first remedy that I recommend is Aconite 200. And aconite is a great one to give anytime there's an accident, that something happens, some kind of trauma, and it's unexpected. It could even be that you witnessed something that happened that was horrible and your brain isn't thinking right. As for example, if your child gets hurt and they're bleeding, you can give some aconite to your child and take some yourself, and it's going to help both of you with the shock. It's also great for specific headaches that are band-like, sudden, violent, and bursting. And it's also great for if you're starting to feel sick, you would take Aconite 200 with Bryonia 30 or 200, and that's a Banerjee protocol that will help stop or arrest a cold as it's happening, or a flu. Okay, thank you. That is aconite. Our next remedy is apis. Apis is actually made from a honeybee, and so with homeopathy, like cures like. So apis, for example, if you got stung by a hornet or a bee, or you started having swelling or allergic reaction, an anaphylactic reaction, you could take apis. You could do this in a 30 or 200. If it's really serious, you could go up to a 1 m. But that's if you're really struggling and you're on their way to the hospital. So this is something you can give on the way to the hospital if you're having these issues. And again, if you have a sting, it's very helpful to deal with that, in addition to ledum, which we'll talk about in just a minute. The next remedy I am recommending is arnica. Most people, if they're familiar with any homeopathic remedy, they would know arnica. So arnica comes from a flower that's grows in the mountains, and it is great for any kind of major injuries, even a broken bone, a contusion, a head injury. Arnica can even be great for a heart issue. So this one I recommend in probably a 30 or 200 typically. If you're just using it for a child, you'd probably use it for a 30 to help them, a 200 if it's more serious. And I would also recommend this for any kind of bleeding, excessive bleeding and fatigue. So if given early, this can really help with swelling and bruising to reduce that. And I like to take arnica after a day of skiing or strenuous sports, like if I'm working in the garden and I know I've been bending down or whatever and I'm going to be achy, I may take a dose of arnica right after that, and maybe before I go to bed if you need to in the morning, but most of the time it's going to help so you don't have that aching, painful feeling when you've overdone it. Okay, arsenicum album is our next remedy, and we need to talk about like cures like. So with homeopathy, something that's similar in the natural, for example, we talked about apis is from honeybee, and if that causes a reaction of swelling and itching in the source remedy, then the very diluted form of homeopathy is going to help that issue. So in this case, we're talking about arsenicum, so it is taken from arsenic. So if you were to take that in the gross form, which you never should, right? What would happen? You would likely have diarrhea, vomiting, your tummy would really hurt. So we would avoid doing that, right? So our Senecum is great for any of those kind of issues. So like I said, diarrhea, food poisoning, any kind of poisoning in fact, like if you were exposed to pesticides or chemicals in a paint or chemicals, cleaning chemicals, and you were feeling really sick, you could take our Senecum. It is also great for a serious fear of death, especially because of those issues. If you're feeling like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to make it through this, this is a great one to help just calm down that anxiety. Again, I'd recommend this one probably in a 30 to start with, maybe a 200 if it was severe food poisoning and the person couldn't get it under control. But most of the time I find for an acute, a 30 works really well. Bryonia alba is the next one we're going to talk about, and that is a great one. It's from wild hops, which is kind of interesting. Bryonia is great, like we talked about with aconite. If you take aconite and bryonia together, actually in the same mouth, you can put the pellets in the mouth. When you first start to feel something coming on, you start to feel a sickness and you're not sure, am I getting a cold, am I getting a flu, what's going on, you can take this one right away. And I love bryonia because it's usually a sudden onset, but it's also great for when you don't want to move. If you ever have a headache and you're like, if I move 1 inch, it's just going to hurt so terribly, I don't want to move. If you break a bone or you have some kind of injury where you just don't want to move, if it would be like, for example, when I broke some ribs, it hurt to laugh, it hurt to smile, anything like that. So that would be a good one for that. Also, if you want to be left alone, or your headache is just so strong that you don't want to do any activity but just lay on the couch, this is a good one for that. So bryonia, I would start maybe in a 30 for any of these issues. If you needed to, you could look at a 200, but most of the time I would say this one would probably be pretty effective in a 30. Okay, Cantharis is our next one. Cantharis is actually from Spanish fly, but it really looks like a beetle to me. So you should look at a picture of it at some point. But Cantharis is thought of for any kind of burning. So for example, we went boating a few days ago and I got very burned. So I was taking Cantharis as an option just to help with the burning. It could be you got burned on the stove, or you touched something too hot, sunburn, radiation burn, whatever it might be. It could be diarrhea that's burning, or even a UTI. Sometimes you can get a urinary tract infection that is very burning. So this is a great one to help with those symptoms. So I would do that one again, probably in a 30. That's usually what I keep. And this is a good one to have in your back pocket when you're at the pool and you see that your kids have already gotten sunburned or burned on their face or their arms or whatever it might be, to start giving it to them at the pool and keep giving it to them until they no longer need it and they're very much better. Ferrum phosphoricum, starts with an F, is made from homeopathic iron. That's its basis, and it's actually a cell salt, which we will learn more about cell salts at some other point, but it's basically innate or part of our body. So we all know that iron is in our body, right? So this one is wonderful because I take this one, this is one of my favorites, if I start to feel a sore throat, just the slightest tickle, even just if you have too much mucus in there. For example, if you've been singing or talking too much, which happens to me a lot, you can take this to help any kind of inflammation that you might be feeling. It is great also with anemia, or when you have blood loss, if you're feeling dizzy, those kind of issues. Also ear infections. This one you can use as a homeoprophylactic, which means that you can give it in advance of something happening. For example, if we were going to go camping and I knew one of my kids had really been pushing their bodies too much, then I would encourage them to take this, or I might just give it to them, Ferrum Phos, like once a day for a couple days before we go, and then if I could, I would try to give it to them during that camping event, and then maybe a day or two after. So if you can anticipate that something's going to be happening in your family, you can give this to that person who's going to be part of that, and you can give it to everybody else in the family if you need to, because I know for my family, when one person goes down, all of a sudden everybody's sick. So I try to be very careful during, like if we're doing performances or whatever it might be, to keep everybody healthy. So I might use this one as a prevention or homeoprophylactically. Okay, Heparin sulfuricum calcareum, or I call it Heparin sulf to make it easier. That is a wonderful remedy. It's almost like a homeopathic antibiotic, but instead of an antibiotic that kills everything in your gut and your body, this actually supports your body, but it can be used in a place where you might use a antibiotic. So for example, if your throat is red and hurting, and you feel like you're getting strep throat, tonsillitis, ear infection, those kind of issues, you're going to want to look at Heparin sulf. It's also great for any time you have, if it's acne, little boils, cold sores in your mouth, little sores in your ears, behind your ear, trying to think where else, you know, just anywhere, even on your hands. If you have something that looks like it's getting infected, this is a great one to take. So I actually like this one in a 200, and I like to use it on a regular basis for acne for my family or those types of issues. Okay, thank you. Okay, Ledum Pastil is our next one, and this is from Marsh Tea. And Ledum is great for anything puncturing your skin. If it be a nail, you stepped on a nail, if you got stung by a bee or a hornet, you got bit by a dog or a cat, or for example, one time my son got bit by a squirrel, if you can believe that. So if the squirrel would have broken the skin, we could have used Ledum to help prevent the infection. It's also great for sprains, like sprained ankles or a sprained wrist. And this is great for bruising and any kind of wounds as well. Oh, and I would also recommend using this for ticks. Okay, so Nux Vomica is our last one that I'd recommend in our pack of 10 that we're going to carry with us for emergencies or anything that's needed. Nux Vomica is from a poison nut seed. So it is great for any kind of nausea, diarrhea, constipation, car sickness, doing something that you're feeling over the top, if that's overworked and you're just exhausted and feeling like you're getting sick, or let's say that you went to, or your child went to a birthday party and they had too much processed food, junk food, whatever it might be, and they're starting to feel sick and tired. This is a great one. I know my daughter loves it when she starts to feel car sick. So this is one that we grab and use quite a bit. I know the other day I ate too many, I think it was crackers, and my tummy just was not feeling well. So I just took a couple doses of this and was able to get off from laying down because I was hurting, and this is a remedy that usually works fairly quickly.